In our culture, there are stories called deer woman stories, and every family on the reservation has a deer woman story. Some kind of experience that happened to some male member of their extended family. Sometimes it's even recent. Yeah. And many tribes have deer woman stories. They vary in nature. They vary from tribe to tribe, but they have one thing in common: is that they they prey on men who only focus on physical appearance. Yeah, they can sniff them out, and that they lead them to their doom, basically. So these are stories that focus on men who only think about physical appearance. Yeah, I mean they see women as sex objects. In other words, so I'll tell this deer woman story. This one takes place uh, in the early days of the reservation when the land was partitioned out. Yeah? The land was cut into small parcels, basically, and not cut but separated. Yeah, and every parcel was about 160 acres, and every family was given a parcel of land, and they put a log cabin out there, team and wagon. Oh, excuse me. Well, that didn't happen in a long time. Oh my, sneezing attack. Yeah, this is in our culture. I have to explain this because this is something I always think of when this happens. In our culture, when you get a sneeze attack out of the blue, it means somebody's thinking about you in a special way. Yeah. So thank you, whoever you are. Oh gosh. Okay. Yeah. So every family had 160 acres. The log cabin was built for them by the government, the American government. They were given a team of horses and a wagon, a cow. Let's see what else. Chickens, um, and they were told to be farmers. Yeah, and I don't know if it was every week or every month or what. They had monthly, I mean, rations where a train would come and dump off all this food that the government gave to the Indians. And it was really bad food. Part of that was farm stuff, and they told the Indians to be farmers, but the problem is in South Dakota, western South Dakota is not farmland. And Lakota people are not farmers because of that. We're hunter-gatherers. So it was not a good thing. Yeah. But anyway, so this is like in the late 1800s. Yeah. That when the reservation began. So I think it was early 1900s that this law was made that cut up the reservation into parcels of land. So in the early 1900s. The story I'm going to tell you happened in the 1920s on the Cheyenne River Sioux Reservation. To show respect to the family, I'm not going to say their name, but I heard it from a guy who I consider very trustworthy and very knowledgeable, and he was a colleague of mine. Yeah, we worked together at one point. So he told me this story, and it's really wow. Yeah, now I think about it, I better turn all the lights on here. Get my flashlight ready just in case. Candles and Then she anyway, anyway, this couple in the night. This is 1920s. Okay, they just got married, and so they were probably like in their early 20s, and they were in their log cabin. Um, it was raining outside, so they decided to stay, and they were doing, whatever, Uh, they had their log cabin did have windows and also a screen door, but um, the log cabins in those days they had dirt floors. They didn't make wooden floors. Yeah, they just used the dirt. Yeah, they just built the cabin. Yeah, and the floor was the ground. So so this is how this every log cabin was this way, and for the Indians back then, this was not a big deal because remember, this is coming from teepee days. Yeah, teepees. There's no carpet. Yeah, there's no wood on the floor. It's ground. So for log cabins, there was no big deal. Yeah, that there was no floor. It was no big deal. So they were inside because it was raining out and it was autumn. Uh, in Lakota culture, deer women come from black-tailed deer. This is why in our custom it's not a good idea to kill black-tailed deer for food. And after you hear the story, and you will know why. Okay? So they come from black-tailed deer. These deer, um, they come around men, or they are not like just right there. They can be way over there and sense you, yeah, and they can read you somehow. So, like say if you have a tiny crush on some woman, that black-tailed deer picks up on it, and then that black-tailed deer will transform itself to look like that woman. You see what I mean? And sometimes maybe you have a crush on several women. So what it does is it takes all these crushes you have and it formulates a woman based on the attributes of all these other women. And it appears like that, so you don't know who it is. See what I mean? So that's generally how they work. So they were in this couple, like I said, they just got married, and they were living in their log cabin, and this they have 160 acres. So there's just one log cabin. Yeah, there's no village. They're just in one log cabin out in the country, in the middle of 160 acres. So it was raining, and so they went inside, and the woman was going to make some soup, and the man was working on some tools. Yeah, he was using tools to make small things to fill in the cracks of the log cabin because winter was coming. So he was sharpening his tools and stuff like that, and here they heard a knock on the door. They had the door open, but the screen door was there. Yeah, they left the screen door closed, and so they wanted to leave the door open because it really smells good. Yeah, and it rains, especially if you're out in the country. It really smells good. The ground smells good, and so the man went to the door, and here there's a woman standing out there, and she had on a long leather dress and moccasins, and her hair was traditional style. But women still dressed like that. Yeah, in the early 1900s, women even up to the 1960s, there were women who were in their 80s and 90s that still dressed like the way Indian women did the 1800s. I saw this myself. Yeah, I went to a feast like this when they were celebrating a lady's 100th birthday. I think I was about 6 years old, and this woman was just lively. Yeah, for 100 years old, she was just lively and very strong woman, and she looked like from back in the photos from back then. And my mom said this is the way they used to dress, and she still dresses like that. She does not like modern things. Yeah, she doesn't even have a bed. She wants to sleep on the ground. Very traditional. So this was not strange to see on the reservation, to see somebody still walking around dressed in traditional style. So they didn't think anything of it, but he didn't recognize her. So he asked her, he said, "Why don't you come in?" He said, "Come inside," and he said, "and get out of the rain." He said, "You can eat with us." And here this lady was just standing there, and she was looking at him, but it seemed like she was looking through him. Yeah. And so he said, "Oh no," he said. So he closed the door really fast, and his wife said, "What are you doing? You crazy?" And he said, "That's a dear woman," he said. And she said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah." She said, "Help me keep this door closed." So they were trying to, keep this. That there was no locks in those days, so they were trying to put stuff in front of it, but they didn't have many belongings. And so next thing, this woman was really kicking. Yeah, she was really kicking at the door, and it was hard. Yeah, really hard. And so the woman peeked out on the window that's next to the door, and the wife, I'll say the wife, okay? The wife peeked out the window, and she saw that this woman was standing there. Her upper part of her body was perfectly still. Yeah, and her arms were straight down by her side, and it was just her legs that were really moving. Yeah, the legs were really kicking the door, and then the head just suddenly turned to look at the wife. Yeah, and she just like looked right through the wife. Yeah, and the wife screamed because it looked just freaky. Yeah, because the top part of her body's just still, and her legs are really, really moving just fast, and then her head just turns really fast and looks at her. She really gets scared, so she screams and pulls in the window. So then that dear woman walks to the window, and she's trying to kick it. Yeah, and then so the man said, "Let's run out the door," he said, "because I think she's going to kick the door in." And so he said he made some noises, yeah, to the back of the log cabin. There was a window back there too, because he wanted to make her walk around to the back of the log cabin. So then he went to that back window and was really, banging things, like frying pan and coffee cup. He's really banging things like that. And here that woman started to walk towards the back of the house. As soon as they got back there, they ran out the door. They ran as far and fast as they could, and they found this little hill, and there was a tree up there. So they climbed up that tree as fast as they could, and then they wasn't that far away from their house, and they heard some loud crashing, banging, and stuff like that. And here they looked at their house, and here that woman came out. She went in when they were running away from the house. This dear woman walked inside the house, and she was really raising hell. And then they saw this woman starting to run. She was running towards some trees on the other direction, and her upper body was perfectly stiff. Her head wasn't even moving. Her arms were straight down by her side. Straight down. They weren't moving. But her legs were moving really fast. And she just, that's wicked to picture. Oh my gosh. And so she ran and ran and went into the trees, and then they were still watching, yeah. And on the other side, there's another hill. I hear this after the trees. They saw this black-tailed deer running up, yeah, running up over that hill. So they're like, "Whew, we have to get a stronger door." They said we have to get a door lock, and so these things were kind of coming, yeah. So this was a deer woman, and so after that they went home and everything was broken, yeah. This deer woman raised hell with everything. The only thing that was intact was the stove. Yeah, they had those old cast iron kind of stoves back in those days where you put wood in it. Yeah, old wood stoves. That was the only thing that the deer woman couldn't ruin. Everything else was broken. Their windows were broken. Their mattress was torn up, and everything was scattered all over the house. So, and then there was deer shit too. Yeah, it's shit in their house. So they had to air it out and take it out, and and that's what happened. Yeah. So they after that they burned some sage because this is unhealthy energy. Yeah, this is really unhealthy. So they burnt sage there, and then they prayed, and they really closed up their the windows and the door because it's nighttime was coming now. Yeah, so they and where else are they supposed to go? Yeah, this is their only home, and it was too dark to. They didn't want to go to relatives because it's too dark. They didn't want to run into. They didn't want to run into this deer woman, because in those days Indians were not allowed to have guns. Yeah, so they didn't have anything to protect them. So they had to stay for the day. So the next morning they walked over to some relatives and told them what happened, and then the story spread really fast. Yeah, so everybody was fortifying their log cabins after this. they they didn't want to get a visit from this deer woman. So this is the kind of thing that happens. Yeah, that when if they see what they're trying to do is they're trying to lure the man into an area where there's a lot of trees, and they'll just stand there. Yeah, they don't say anything because they're not human. Yeah, and so then the man, men who just you know they see women as objects. They see women as sex toys. These men, they're gonna start undressing the woman, and she's just gonna stand there. She's not gonna do anything. Yeah, they'll undress her, and then they'll have her lay down. Yeah, they'll lay her on the ground, and then they start having sex. And then before he before he has orgasm, she turns into a deer. Yeah, back to the deer, and then she starts stomping on him, aiming for his private area. Yeah, and then so then he goes he freaks out, of course, and then he has to if he survives, and then he has to see a medicine man right away because when he was having sex with her, see, there's unhealthy energy was going inside his body. And usually they lose confidence in everything they do. And what they're really good at, they lose it. Yeah, they lose their talent. And it's like they're never the same. They always seem disturbed, even when they get all the energy out. Yeah, even when they get all that unhealthy energy out of the victim's body, he still is lacking confidence. And it really takes a long time. Yeah, he has to heal from this somehow. And lots of men, they don't make it. Yeah, they end up spending the rest of their lives being weak. They don't have confidence. If they were married before, they usually they end in divorce because the woman, can't get him to do anything. And it's just like he lost sense of purpose. Yeah. So it's a really tough one to come back from. And this is why it's a serious thing. So this is telling you, the kind of things that can happen when you only focus on physical appearances. And it's hard to come back from this. Yeah, it's really hard to come back. There's lots of these stories. If you go on a reservation and if you get to know a family really good, yeah, to the point where they can trust you, you earn their trust. It's really worth it to ask them, and to tell you a deer woman story, because like I said, every family has one, at least one. And what is this telling you? Some of these deer woman stories are ancient. Yeah, this is telling you that Indians were not perfect. See, lots of people who really are interested in Indian culture, and they fantasize about being Indian to the point where they say they're born in the wrong skin and things like that. They think that Indians were perfect in the old days. No, we weren't. Look at these stories. There was the reason why these stories exist is because there were men and women that were doing these things. Yeah? And so this is what happened. They have to learn from it. Or it's death.